Like I said, I'm very excited to share with you today about my views on differentiation and this awesome teacher tool called Tailor-ED that can help teachers in grades K through 8 plan great differentiated math lessons. I love this image. I know that everyone who's ever worked in education knows at least one person who feels like this image represents differentiation. I personally, in my early years, I thought, hey, I can just print worksheets on different colored paper and that's differentiation because this kid has a red paper and this kid has an orange paper. And I really didn't understand what differentiation was and what it meant. And part of my goal and my passion now is helping teachers really understand what differentiation means and how it can work well in their classroom. This image also represents the big issue at hand. A lot of teachers believe that they're using differentiation in their classrooms, and they're not. As Aldo said, I have 13 years of experience. It's kind of strange to think about that. Sometimes I feel like I just started teaching yesterday. I originally started out as a high school English teacher. That was my passion, my love, and my journey just kind of led me down some different paths. And I currently teach in a K-5 school. It is inner city. And we have a lot of high needs students, a lot of differentiation that needs to happen. My district that I teach in is one-to-one with Apple devices. The students have iPads, and the teachers and the older students have MacBooks. And it's been very eye-opening to me to see how teachers use and integrate technology in their teaching. Some teachers, it's like a natural extension of themselves, and it just, flows out of them, and it's wonderful. And some teachers, especially teachers who've been teaching a very long time, really have difficulty adapting to the new tools. I'm just going to give you a minute to read this definition of differentiation for yourself. So I want to look at some key words in this definition. The first one that sticks out to me is consistently. Differentiation happens on a regular basis. If you just teach one lesson with small groups or one lesson with different activities, that's not a consistent approach. Now, for you, consistently may mean every day, 2 times a week, 2 times a month. It varies depending on the needs of your classroom and your teaching style. The next word that sticks out to me is variety. This is not just what you're comfortable with as a teacher. We know that students have different learning styles. We as teachers have different teaching styles, and there are ways that we are most comfortable teaching. But differentiation and it really truly giving good differentiation pushes us as teachers to stretch yourself and maybe have to learn a new skill or learn a new way of teaching. This year I had to learn how to do long division in a grid so that I could help the students I was with, and I had never done that before. And I had to watch a lot of videos on how to do it because I learned long division the old-fashioned way, and it was really difficult for me to understand, but I pushed myself to do that. The next words that stick out to me are content, process, and products. These are the areas that you can modify with differentiation. And let me encourage you, if you're new to differentiation or you're not comfortable with it, don't try to change all 3 of those things at one time. Pick one, and once you're comfortable modifying the content, then move on to the process. Just choose one. I personally, when I find a new tool or a new method, I like to jump headfirst into things, and I like to do it all at one time. And sometimes that backfires on me because I get really overwhelmed because I want to do it right. So if you're just starting out with this, just choose one of those three things to modify. Learning readiness is the next keyword that sticks out to me. This is where the students are, not where they're supposed to be when they come to you. A couple of years ago, I taught a 3rd grade class, and those students were super low. They did not come to me ready for 3rd grade. So I had a choice to make. I could have right then said, okay, it doesn't matter that you don't know these basic skills. We're gonna learn 3rd grade content no matter what. Or I could backtrack some and meet them where they were. So learning readiness really calls on us as teachers to know our students and know exactly where they are. Interest is another keyword. What the students like. That can be how they like to learn. That can be outside of school interest. That requires you to have a relationship with these students. You have to know your students and know what they like. And diverse, academically diverse. Their background, how they learn best. In my district, it's a pretty big district. And as I said earlier, I teach at an inner city school. Also in our district, we have what we call the country schools. And that demographic of students in the country schools is completely different than the students in the city schools. So what my 3rd graders needed at my building might have not been what the 3rd graders needed 15 minutes down the road. So you have to know you have to be aware of how those students come to you and what their background for learning is. One of the things I like to do when I'm teaching and I ask my students to give me a definition, if they're struggling, is I say, okay, well, tell me what it's not. So in this image, you can see some things that differentiation is not. Tracking. I understand that that's done in some schools and districts, and it's got a good purpose and good outcomes, but it doesn't technically qualify as differentiation. Rigid ability grouping within the classroom. I personally am a fan of ability grouping within the classroom. That is wonderful if it's used correctly, but it has to be flexible. We can't group students at the beginning of the school year into rigid groups that never change. That doesn't count as differentiation. Something extra on top of good teaching. Differentiation is good teaching. It's not something extra. It's for every student, not just for students who are identified as gifted or students who have learning issues or are challenged. And it's not just a synonym for group work. Differentiation can involve group work, but it's not synonymous with differentiation. So let's talk about why differentiation is important. A couple of weeks ago, I saw this graphic on social media, and it really sums up the need and the importance of differentiation perfectly. Every student is their own unique person. Quality instruction is not one size fits all. We as teachers are responsible for modifying content, process, product, and the environment to ensure that every student gets what he or she needs. We can't just dish out one type of instruction and expect all of our students to get what they need from it. So what is Tailor-ED? I found Tailor-ED through a social media teachers group in January of 2019. Because of the nature of what I teach, I do teach STEM education. So in the afternoons, I teach STEM classes. Then in the mornings, I pull small group intervention students. So I knew Tailor-ED was going to look a little different for me because I don't have a full class of 25 kids that I'm using it with. But after I went through it and I planned and I taught my first lesson, I was hooked. So basically what Tailor-ED does is you go in and you tell it what you want to teach. And it curates free resources from all over and puts them together in one place and says, okay, here are all of the resources that you can use for free to teach this particular lesson. Now, I personally know I have spent hours upon hours searching for just the right resource, for just the right lesson. And what Tailor-ED does is it saves that time for you. It does the searching, it does the looking for you. We know as teachers that our time is very precious. And so Tailor-ED is a great time saver. So we're going to take a look at the platform. So this is your workspace. Once your login has been created, this is the page that you come to every time. The buttons and links on this page are very intuitive, and it's not hard to figure out what to do. You can see, if I scroll down, I've already created classes, and these are some of my classes from the past school year. You can see the lessons that have been created, and we'll dive deeper into how to do all of those things in just a few minutes. So let's take a look at the different pieces of the workspace. So up here, where at the very top is the top bar. So the workspace I already told you is where you land. My classroom, if you click on that, you can actually zero in on a particular class. You'll see if I click here, it'll take me to that particular class. The FAQ area is super duper helpful when you're first starting out with Tailor-ED and you have tons of questions. You can see here, there's pretty much any question that you could have is right here in this FAQ area. If you click on the person over here, then that lets you edit your profile. It's not letting me edit it today, but that's okay. This area right here is the help or chat box. It's on every single screen that you work through in Tailor-ED, and if you click on it, it lets you have live chat with support people at Tailor-ED. They are so helpful with anything. If there's something that is not working right for you, you can just send them a message and they will get right back to you and let you know, we're working on this. If there's a topic that you don't see that you'd like, you can send them a message and say, hey, is there a way that you could add adding and subtracting fractions for third graders into the platform? And they'll message you back and say, we got a request, we're working on that. They're super helpful. Going back to the workspace, so you can see this is the class icon. If you click on the View Class button, again, it will show you all the students that you have in that class. It will let you add students. You can edit it that way. And then going back to the workspace, these boxes, these green and yellow boxes, are the lesson or the unit icons. So these are ones that I've already taught, and you can tell because at this box at the bottom, there is a proficiency percentage. So after the lesson is done, the students get an exit ticket, and this is their proficiency for that particular lesson that I taught. So you can see it very quickly at a glance. If you click on the three dots, it will open up another menu that lets you get into different parts of the lesson. And we'll look at those a little bit more in just a minute. So creating your first class in Tailor-ED is really easy. So you scroll all the way to the bottom of your workspace, and mine is kind of big because I said I've already got my classes in there from last year. And you just click on this Add New Class button, and you type in the name. And you choose the grade level. We'll say these are third graders today, and then you click on Create Class. So this is your first class, and here you're at the blank class page. So you can go in and you can enter students manually like this. Or if you have a list of students saved on your computer somewhere, you can actually go in here and do a copy-paste list, or you can add them all in like a bulk import here, and you can just hit Add. I know some districts and some places have concerns about student privacy issues. You can just enter their first names like I did here, or first name and their surname initial. You don't have to enter the entire student name. I think if you wanted to, you could even maybe put in like by student number if you wanted it to be really, keeping their privacy down to, a minimum. So once you have started adding in student names, this pre-assessment link appears down here at the bottom. And this is really the heart of Tailor-ED. The pre-assessment is 12 questions designed to discover each student's learning style and motivation profile. These questions are research-based, and they are key to how Tailor-ED creates your flexible, differentiated groups. So this is the link. If you click on this button, it will give you options to share with your students. You can share the link itself. You can share into Google Classroom, or you can share via a QR code. And I'm just going to click on the link and show you what it looks like. The questions are all the same. The initial pre-assessment questions are all the same. So if you have low readers or students who struggle with reading, you could, in theory, project this at the front of the room and read the questions, go with them, go through the questions with the students. It is incredibly important that your students answer these questions honestly. I know sometimes with older kids, they're just like, oh, just let me get through this. I'm just going to click all the same things so I can get through it. But it's very important for them to answer honestly so that it can put them in the best group. So now I'm going to close that questionnaire out, and I'm going to go into a class that I've already worked through some. So this is a practice class that I built. So you can pretend that this is, I've put all my students in my class. They've all taken the pre-assessment. You can see that each student has a different colored box beside their name. That's your signal that they've taken the pre-assessment. And you can see that these students have already completed one lesson. So you can kind of look through that. We're going to create a new lesson. So I'm going to go to my Workspace. And I'm going to click this button right here. This is your Add a New Lesson. So here I am. The grade level will pre-populate based on the grade level that you set the class at, but you can manually go in and change it. So if you have a class of students that's very advanced, you can bump them up a grade level. If they're really behind, you can take them down a grade level. If there's some basic skills that maybe they missed in the grade level before that you need to catch them up on, you can always go down. So we're going to leave it at 3rd grade. And then here's the topics. So there's a drop-down list that you can choose from. But if you don't, let's say you know that they need adding and subtracting, you can type in a keyword and it will identify all of the messages or the topics that are there. You can also search by Common Core Standard, and you can see that things come up. So I'm going to choose this lesson right here, adding and subtracting. You name the lesson or the unit. So I'm just going to name it adding and subtracting. And then here you have the access to technology. So based on how you answer this question, it will give you different activities based on what kind of technology you have in your classroom. I'm going to choose one-to-one devices for each student because that's what I have in my district. And then I'm going to hit create.